So are you a sports fan?
Absolutely.
What's your favorite sport?
I would say football. Football because you got to do it all in one day on one day like that. So I would say football.
All right. So you are a football fan. Now I got to ask you this question. As a football fan, who's your favorite team?
The Giants. New York.
Oh, you know where I'm coming from then. You are more critical of the Giants.
Right.
You are of the 49ers, which is my favorite team. And I'm more critical of 49ers than I am of your team. I know y'all have a shitty quarterback in Daniel Jones, and I know y'all don't really have a backup for him. And I'm all right with that. I know y'all did Saquon Barkley wrong, and I'm all right with that.
Right.
Now, I don't really care what y'all do, that I want y'all to lose. But when it comes to my Giants, I'm very critical of a quarterback that even took us to the Super Bowl last year. Now, you'd ask, why are you critical?
49ers.
Like yours. Huh?
You said Giants. I think you meant 49ers.
49ers, yeah.
Right.
I'm very critical. Now, you'd ask, well, wait a minute. You guys have gone far in the playoffs and did a whole lot in the last few years, and you've been a good team consistently.
Mm-hmm.
So why are you hard on your team? Well, I'm hard on my team because I want them to win. So I would say things, and you might think, well, he's siding with someone else. But no, I'm not. I want my team to win the championship as often as possible. So if they're wrong, kissing their ass and saying they're great isn't going to make them better. Telling them that we don't need to get better at linebacker and defensive tackle isn't going to make them get better. And me saying we haven't won since Steve Young won it is not making me look like a bad fan. It's an honest fan that wants to see them do better. So I ask you, when you say it seems like I'm siding with the government, if the government's whooping your ass, if my son was getting his ass whooped by the next door neighbor, I might be siding with the neighbor's kid when I say he keep whooping your ass. You need to go whoop his. Until you whoop his, he's the better man in the fight.
Okay, but let's say you wouldn't go with the as a 49er fan, right? Even if you're a 49er player, you're not going to help the Giants be better than the 49ers, right?
Well, if I'm not helping them if I'm telling the 49ers, though.
No, I'm getting I rock with your logic. I
don't want to trade. I don't want us to trade someone to make them get better. I don't want to help, especially if it's an example, a rival.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is everything you said about correcting the 49ers, I agree with. Mm-hmm. But you wouldn't do that as a Giant, though, right? You would do that as a 49er, right?
Well, yeah, I would correct my 49ers. And if I had to do it in front of the Giants, I'd assume the Giants knew.
But what you do, though, is you go with the Giants and then talk trash to the 49ers that you say you love. Right. That's what you.
Well, I'm not with. Well, you'd have to name how I'm with.
Even when you say. So even when you decide that you're taking the side that blacks are more harmful to blacks, as opposed to recognizing the condition that we in can only be pointed at one location, which is this government or this body that we've been a part of since we were taken over here as captives. We've never been, if you look at the diagram, if you just go from integration, which is what, the 60s till now, talking about maybe 70 years. But we've been here, they say, since the 16. Even if you say slavery was before the 1600s, if we use the 1600s as an earmark, you're talking about 1600s to 1964. So that's 364 years of oppression, systematic oppression, 70 years of being so-called free, and even, integrated, which at the cost of integration, we still had the CIA crack epidemic. We still had COINTELPRO. We still had the feminist movement. We still had the drug epidemic. So it's not like they stopped attacking us. They just, air quotes, allowed us to so-called integrate. And even integration furthered black oppression. So when you make the analogy of the 49ers and you being a Giants fan, me being a Giants fan, I would never go to the 49ers and give them trade secrets on how to beat the Giants. I would never go to the 49ers and try to steal players from the Giants to make the 49ers better. I would only do what you said initially, but only do it within the Giants. Even when you said your kid is getting beat up by the neighbor. You're not going to stand on the side of the neighbor and say, yeah, beat my son up. You're going to stand with your son and give him the strength and the tools and the weapons to beat the hell out of the neighbor, unless you don't love your son.
So I would say that in the song, that's exactly what I'm doing. If I'm telling somebody, when have you won a championship? Because let me tell you who knows when the last time we won a championship. Everybody else in the league. It's not a secret.
Right.
When I say we suck at linebacker, I didn't tell them something they didn't know. They already scouted my team. So chances are when I say we need a new running back, we do. Christian McCaffrey's getting old. We're not dumb. The league ain't dumb. We do need a defensive tackle. Saying that out loud make them say, yeah, we're going to run more. As a matter of fact, people being critical of Kansas City Chiefs helped Kansas City Chiefs to win a Super Bowl because they kept telling them what they couldn't do, what they weren't good at, how you should attack them.
But they never sided with the enemy to help Kansas City get better. They never allowed
Kansas City to be. Did have their quarterback come out and say he's sick of them dropping passes, and people were shocked that he did it.
No, but that's not a bad.
Never done it before.
But telling them that they shouldn't drop passes is not a bad thing. But when we look at the subject,
some people said he should have done it in public. He should have done it in private.
Well, as the Bible would say, open rebuke is better than secret love. So that's not a bad thing. So that's not the bad.
Say that again. Now tell them where they can find that in the Bible.
I get it.
I like that. I like that quote. That's a very good one. Because if you think about it, it's a few quotes in the Bible that we like to make, but it's something to make because it turns the fingers back at us. We like to quote things that make other people look bad.
Right.
That's a good one.
It's Proverbs 27. That's Proverbs 27:5. It says, open rebuke is better than secret love. Now, what you said on the subject, what makes what you did in that video on the subject do, and the reason why I said it desensitizes you, is it takes away from the fight that they did. No nation disrespects their ancestors' fight more than black people. Jewish people don't disrespect their ancestors' fight against the Germans. The Arabs don't disrespect their ancestors' fight against the Jewish people, but we do. So you said, what have we built? So if I was to just name a few, because I know you mentioned Black Wall, so that's usually like the famous one they like to mention. You got Seneca Village, you got Portsmouth, Ohio, Wyandotte, Michigan, Pollock, Louisiana, Salina, Tennessee, Comanche County, Texas. You got tons of cities. You even got cities now that today are lakes that were once black cities. And what happens is whenever we build up, there's always that same oppressor, that same white man that comes and tear it down. And then the war never stops. And we're always prepared for the war. The problem is people on our side will switch sides. And they'll join the other side. Like Fred Hampton, for example, when they did that movie, you could see how COINTELPRO infiltrates them. You'll see how when they released what Nixon and Reagan and all and was doing with the drug epidemic that was specifically targeted to us. Now, why do you think that is? You had two. I don't agree with their religious beliefs, meaning Martin Luther King and Malcolm. I don't agree with their religious beliefs, right? But you had two black men that was able to galvanize black people for a cause, because they'll tell you that black people didn't build anything, that they didn't do anything. And then what they did was they had COINTELPRO infiltrate the Nation of Islam. Malcolm X gets separated and then killed. Then you got the white man kill Martin. And at the time that he killed Martin, Martin is saying that the dream that he had was a nightmare, that it was superficial, letting you know trying to eat at master's table wasn't the right thing to do. And then he gets killed. And then at that break in the 70s, you had the feminist movement and the drug epidemic. And when crack came, it eradicated black people. And so if we're gonna not honor our ancestors that made mistakes and did good things, we'll never recognize the real enemy. And we'll never see it coming. That's why they still voting. People still gonna try to find a reason to vote for Joe Biden or vote for Trump. They're gonna try to find a reason to still vote, thinking that our hope is in that. You're familiar when President Biden got in office and the Chinese people got that bill passed? I think they got it passed in like when if Biden got inaugurated in January, I think like 3 weeks when somebody attacked the Asian, they got the anti-Asian bill passed. You familiar with that?
Yes.
They didn't get that bill passed by joining America. They got that bill passed by using their internal power and saying, we won't support you, we won't build you, we won't help you. But because we have such a integrated type of mentality, that's why we don't think like that. We still find ways to join an enemy when he was never meant to be our friend.
Okay. Now I would like to be able to speak towards that. Now you talked about a lot of cities that you said were formed and I guess sustained by blacks, but then the white man came in and destroyed those said cities. You said every time that we build something, the white man comes and destroys it. When I said in that song, I said, if Black Wall Street was so important that we continue to keep talking about Black Wall Street was important, then we could have easily built it back. I went over to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and went there and I saw that there's a college called Langston Hughes College. And there's also nothing else. There's Langston Hughes College and a church. The land is cheap. Blacks could have bought it. We have a whole lot of celebrities with clothing lines and all kinds of stuff. They could have set that up and rebuilt Black Wall Street themselves. They haven't. They just complain about Black Wall Street not being there. You talked about how those other cities are, and I know I grew up black. A lot of us grew up black in the United States. Guess where we didn't hear anything about those cities? From parents, grandparents, never heard these things. So then that means they failed us by telling us where these things are and what they meant. What you said the Jews do. The Jews actually do that to their children. They send their kids to Hebrew school when they're children. When you said they don't talk about how the Germans won, well, last I checked, they got billions from the Germans, and the Germans got wiped, as far as their empire, got wiped out, and they ended up getting their own state from it. Now over in Germany, you can't even say nothing bad about the Jews. Not only that, but the Jews run the legal system, Jews run Hollywood, Jews run the banking system. So the Jews, in my opinion, would be the Patriots. They're actually winning. So if I was a Patriot fan, I wouldn't be sitting around talking about how horrible my Patriots are, because we've won 7 Super Bowls in a span of about 10 years. That's pretty impressive. So I wouldn't be talking bad about them. But if I am, i.e. the Raiders, then I would be talking bad about them because of where they sit. So you're right. The Chinese, you said that they don't become American. No, actually they do. I talked to a young man by the name of Steve Kim who comes on my show, and almost every Asian that I talk to, second generation Asian, you know how they speak? Perfect English. Everybody else decides that being a part of America is the best way to integrate and subvert America, if that's what you're trying to do, which is what the Jews did. Blacks complain about what they get in the justice system. Blacks complain, Black women are always complaining about, look at our mortality rate inside the hospitals when we trying to give babies. You know what should happen then if you believe that these white people don't take care of you in the white hospital? You should do what the Jews did. I went up to New York, and I was surprised to see a police car riding around with a 6-pointed star on it. A Hebrew police. I couldn't believe it. They had their own. They have their own hospitals, their own schools, their own everything. Blacks, we've been here long enough to do that. When you talked about integration, you know what I say? I've always said, since I'm supposed to be the bad guy that kisses the white people's ass, apparently, I've always said straight up, integration was the worst thing that ever happened to Black folks. My words. Next thing I've said, openly, Black folks have an opportunity. Black women should never be going to a white doctor. Why the fuck would you believe that white people are evil and keep going to them, asking them to be good? You're a religious man, or a man of God and a man of faith. You know, you don't get down on your knees and pray to the devil that maybe he'll give you something good. You don't get down on your knees and say, please, devil, tomorrow, don't jump on me like you normally do. Tomorrow, give a brother a break. Maybe you can give me some reparations for all that evil you did to Adam and Eve and all this other people that you're ruining their life. Give me some reparations. But that's exactly what we're doing. Calling the white man devil, calling the white man evil, and then turning around and asking the white man for a favor. No, we should go to war with the white man, just like you go to war with Satan. You go to war with demons. You don't go around and ask them questions. So I'd assume people would be on my side if they were black and understand that what I'm saying as a 49er fan, I want to go to war with S. I want to go to war with the NFC. And then I want to go to war with the AFC so I can take home that trophy. Because as long as I can barely get out of the NFC West or can't get out of the NFC, then I'll never get a chance to go and try to get that trophy. So I'll always be that guy.
Appreciate it. So when you spoke about the Asian, just one correction. I didn't say that they wasn't in America or couldn't speak English, but every city has a Chinatown. Blacks can't have their own town.
When we got Martin Luther King Drive,
and every Martin Luther King Drive, hey, before they called it Martin Luther King, it was terrible. And it's still, you every Martin Luther King in the black neighborhood.
We made it that way. We made it that way. You know it.
I'm gonna get to that. When you talk about the reparations part, I'm not gonna say whether I'm for or against reparations, but you did kind of just double talk, because the Jewish man gets, to this day, like the New York governor just gave $185 million to victims of the Holocaust. When you think about it, that generation is probably gone. But when you look up the news article, it says it's not just for their generations, it's for the generations after. And that's the
black women got $10 billion from Goldman Sachs to go and start businesses.
That's cap, because here's what would have been better. Here's what would have been better.
I'm just saying they got it. Not that it was good. I think it was horrible that they gave it to black women, because they don't do anything for black men.
Well, before we get to that, because I know how you feel about the black woman.
Yeah, you know it's coming, baby. You know it's coming.
We'll get to that in a second. So now, but what I wanted to point out, though, when World War, and because you brought up the Jewish thing, which I think I mentioned it as well, I just want to highlight something in which goes back to this subject of who's done more harm. The earth knew that what the Germans did to Jewish people was horrible. So much so that they divided a land called Palestine in half. Why? So that they didn't have to sit with who was oppressing them, so that they can be free. And then they fund them to this day. They reverence the Holocaust to this day. When black people got freed from slavery, they gave them nothing that you can say is retribution for the irreparable damage of uprooting a people from one continent, bringing them to another continent, stripping them. The Jewish people never lost their identity. Blacks lost their identity, their name, their race, their creed, and everything. And still, without reparations, in spite of it all, when the white man was going through his Great Depression, that's when we built. The church was one of the major cornerstones in the black community during what the white man called his Great Depression. Those cities I talk about, Seneca Village. Seneca Village was a village in Central Park that when they just wanted to expand it, they just displaced all the people out of Seneca Village so they can expand a park. And black people were just powerless to fight against it. Now, one thing I agree with you on, when you say our fathers or our mothers didn't teach us the parts of history that would allow us to not make the same mistakes, that's a part of the fear of the white man. After Tulsa, Oklahoma, you said it got destroyed. You know what they did after Tulsa, Oklahoma got destroyed? They integrated it, which is what the white man wanted. And once you integrate, you lose everything. Once we integrated education, that's one thing we agree on. Integration was horrible, because when you integrate, it led to more oppression. Remember, I said I was going to tell you how Martin Luther King got messed up. The streets I'm talking about, when I made the joke about the streets. And education, Little Rock 9, if anybody's not familiar with Little Rock 9, Little Rock 9 was when they took 9 black kids, brought them down to Arkansas. That's that photo where they got Jerry Jones in it, because he's in that picture with them with the kids, because he's a part of the racist crowd that's ready to assault these 9 black children.
Yeah.
Right. So now as he's forcing them, as our people are forcing them thinking integration is going to work, I can play you a video of the woman saying that they asked her, what was her experience? She said, well, I would have been more nicer to my brother and sister if I wouldn't have went to that school. because they were oppressing her at that school. Talk about other kids was oppressing her at that school. When she came home, she took that oppression because she couldn't fight against them. So now she fights against her own. Now that's just one little girl. Now imagine the little girls, the boys, the grown men that get pulled over by the police for crimes that they didn't commit, get searched, XYZ. Now they're getting oppressed, and then now they come back into their neighborhood. That's why we become oppressive to each other, because of the oppression that we're getting from this enemy that we call the so-called white man. So that plays a part on this subject of why when you see us being so violent to each other, it's because of the violence that we have been getting from the white man since we've been here. And just because we get a little cookie, like Robert De Niro said in that movie with Cuba Gooding when he called him little cookie, just because we get a little cookie or a little trinket, the Bible says a gift destroys the heart. So just because we get a little gift, it doesn't mask the hundreds of years of oppression that we've never been able to get over. And I'll just say one more thing and I'll give it to you. Even genetically, when they genetically looked at our DNA, and not just ours, they looked at Jewish people's DNA too. When they looked at our DNA, traces of the effects of slavery is actually embedded into our DNA. I'll yield with that because I don't want to take up too much time.
No, let me tell y'all something. Hey, listen,